All right, let's do it. Today we're taking a deep dive into the life of Otto Flagge, German architect and city planner. And you won't believe this, but our main source is his Wikipedia page. It's amazing what you can learn about someone just from what's online.
Yeah, it's true. And with Flagge, there's a lot to unpack, not just his career, but also this really fascinating thing. He was really into travel sketching.
Yep.
And get this, he created all these detailed architectural drawings. Straight in ink, no pencil, no erasing, just straight to ink.
Talk about no room for error. It makes you wonder how many places did he document this way. But first, let's go back to the beginning. Flagge was born in Hildesheim, Germany in 1938 and attended the Adrianum Gymnasium, a school known for its strong humanist tradition. I'm curious, do you think that early exposure to the humanities maybe played a role in his later work?
It's certainly possible. That kind of classical education. It often fosters an appreciation for historical context, which is crucial for any architect or city planner. They're always working with existing structures and these evolving urban landscapes.
So maybe those early years planted the seeds for his, well-rounded approach to design. From there, Flagge went on to study architecture at the Technical University of Darmstadt, graduating in 1964. And it sounds like he had that competitive spirit even back then, working as a project leader on architectural competitions.
Yeah, that drive to excel really seems to be woven into his journey. But a major turning point came in 1966, when he received a scholarship to study urban planning in England, which led him to the University of Edinburgh. He studied under Percy Johnson Marshall, a big name in urban design.
Wow. Think about that. Heading to England to learn about city planning. I wonder, what do you think he took away from that experience?
Well, England, especially London, had undergone this massive post-war reconstruction. It was dealing with all the challenges of modernization. And he got some great experience. He worked on projects in Edinburgh City Centre and even a town expansion plan for Broxburn-Upall. This was hands-on experience with the complexities of urban growth and trying to find that delicate balance between preserving history and embracing the future.
And speaking of complex, his next stop was London itself. He landed a position with the Greater London Council, or GLC, which at that time was responsible for all major municipal projects. Talk about a trial by fire.
Oh, yeah. The GLC was a powerhouse back then. They were tackling everything from transportation to housing. And Flagge got involved in some really significant projects, like the Waterloo Station area reorganization. Can you imagine trying to redesign that bustling transportation hub? He also worked on the Thames embankment at Greenwich Pier, a project with a lot of historical and aesthetic considerations.
It sounds like he got to see both the big picture and the finer details of city planning. But it wasn't always easy, was it? Tell us about his involvement in the London South Cross Route project.
Yes, the South Cross Route, a proposed motorway that faced a lot of opposition. This is where we really see that clash between progress and preservation. The proposed motorway cut through some established neighborhoods, and people were really concerned about displacement, noise pollution, and the destruction of historic areas.
So it wasn't just about designing a road. It was about navigating the social and political ramifications of urban development. How do you think that experience shaped him as a planner?
I think it probably instilled in him the importance of considering the human impact of any project. The South Cross Route controversy really highlighted the need for community engagement, for understanding the needs and concerns of those directly affected by urban planning decisions.
A valuable lesson for anyone working to shape the spaces we inhabit. Now, in the middle of all this London hustle, Flagge found time for romance. He married archaeologist Ingeborg Flagge in 1967. I wonder if their shared passion for history influenced his later work.
It's an interesting thought. They returned to Germany in 1969. And he took a job at the Bonn branch of the Gutherstrack Planning Office. And look at what he tackled in Bonn, the development of the Bonn-Tannenbusch district. This wasn't just about designing buildings, it was about creating a whole new community.
And Bonn-Tannenbusch was part of a larger wave of suburban development happening in Germany at the time. They were trying to address housing shortages and create modern living spaces for a growing population. So Flagge was right in the middle of it all, balancing functionality with social needs. He also advised on city planning after a major administrative reorganization, and get this, he even contributed to the capital city concept after German reunification.
Wow, that's quite a range. He wasn't afraid to tackle the big picture and all the little details of city management, and he did all of this while working on his doctorate. He received his Dr. Ing from the Technical University of Darmstadt in 1974.
Wait, so he even tackled all the dry stuff?
He did. His doctorate was on the legal side of urban planning, all those contracts and regulations that make large-scale projects happen. It's the foundation for getting things built, but it's not always the most exciting part of the job.
It's like he was building his expertise from the ground up, literally. From the legal frameworks to the grand visions, he seemed determined to master it all.
Yeah, and that thoroughness likely served him well in his next role. He became the head of the planning office in Leverkusen, focusing on more practical things, like land use plans and coordinating transportation with the surrounding landscape.
So he was willing to roll up his sleeves and get into the nitty-gritty of city management. It seems like he wasn't afraid of a challenge, big or small. But the highlight of his career was still to come. In 1987, he was elected City Planning Director of Kiel.
A pretty prestigious position.
That's right. This was his chance to put all that experience and vision into practice, to shape an entire city. Like, all those years of learning and refining his skills led to this moment.
And he definitely made his mark on Kiel, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. We're talking revitalizing the harbor's southern tip, creating new residential areas, revamping the train station and surrounding area. He even breathed new life into the Friedrichsort district. It seems he had a real knack for seeing the potential in those often overlooked spaces. From forgotten corners to grand cityscapes, Flagge seemed determined to make a difference. But we'll dive into those Kiel projects in more detail later. For now, let's shift gears and look closer at this fascinating hobby of his, the travel sketching. Remember that unique technique we mentioned?
Oh, yeah. Direct inking, no going back, just pure confidence in every stroke. It's almost like he was translating that architectural precision to his art.
I know. Can you imagine the skill to commit to every line like that? No room for a shaky hand. And the list of places he's documented is incredible. Uzbekistan, Brazil, China, India. It's like a visual diary of his explorations, capturing the heart of each place with just ink and watercolor.
And what's really cool is that he didn't just, document landmarks. He sketched everyday scenes, capturing the rhythm of life in all these different places. It's a good reminder that even with all the grand schemes of urban planning, it's the people, the human element, that truly brings a city to life.
So even after retiring from his official position in Kiel in 1999, Flagge didn't slow down. He ran a private planning consultancy until 2012. Staying involved in the field he obviously loved, it seems like this drive to shape and improve our built environment was more than just a job for him. It was a real passion.
I think you're right. It's like architecture and urban planning weren't just professions for Flagge, but ways of seeing the world. And we're really lucky that he shared those perspectives with us, both through his build projects and his amazing sketches.
Absolutely. So stay tuned as we dive deeper into the projects that really defined Otto Flagge's legacy in Kiel. We'll explore the challenges he faced, the decisions he made, and the impact he had on this dynamic city.
While we're on the topic of those sketches, I was looking at Flagge's Wikipedia page, and it says, well, I'm paraphrasing here, that for Flagge, sketching was a way to really engage with architecture in its urban and natural environment. It wasn't just about capturing a pretty picture.
It was about understanding the soul of a place,
Yeah.
right? Seeing how the buildings interacted with the landscape and the people living there.
Exactly. And remember, he did all of this directly in ink. No room for error. That level of confidence, that decisiveness, it really says a lot about how well he understood perspective and composition.
Wow, it's almost like he could visualize the entire scene before even putting pen to paper. But it's more than just technical skill, right? There's real artistry in those sketches.
Absolutely. The way he uses line weight to create depth.
Yeah.
How he captures the play of light and shadow. These are all elements of artistic expression that take his work beyond just draftsmanship.
And it makes you wonder, did that artistic eye influence his urban planning? Did he approach city design with the same attention to detail, the same sense of aesthetics as his sketches?
I think it's safe to say that his artistic sensibilities were definitely a part of his planning work. Think about the praise he got for bringing urbanity and vitality to Kiel.
Yeah.
That suggests he wasn't just thinking about functionality, but also the visual impact, how the city would make people feel.
So it's not just about efficient traffic flow and enough housing. It's about creating a city that's visually pleasing, a place where people feel connected to their surroundings and proud to call home.
Exactly. And that's where Flagge's perspective is so interesting as both an architect and an artist. You really got it. That a city is more than just a bunch of buildings. It's this living, breathing thing that needs to be designed with both practicality and beauty in mind. Think about your own neighborhood for a second. What makes it feel livable? Flagge was dealing with those same questions all those years ago.
That's a great point. It is fascinating to think how one person's vision can shape the experience of so many. But let's not forget, Flagge wasn't working alone. He was a member of the SPD, the Social Democratic Party of Germany. How do you think his political views might have influenced his urban planning?
That's a great question. The SPD has always been associated with social justice and making life better for working people. So it's very possible that Flagge's political beliefs influenced his focus on things like creating affordable housing, better public transportation, and making cities more pedestrian-friendly. All things that benefit a lot of people.
It's a good reminder that urban planning isn't just about aesthetics and how things work. It's also political. The choices planners make really affect people's lives.
Absolutely. And it shows how important it is to have diverse voices and different perspectives involved in the planning process. We need to make sure everyone's needs are considered, not just the wealthy or powerful.
Okay, so as we dig deeper into Otto Flagge's story, we're seeing a really complex and fascinating person. He's an architect, an artist, a city planner, and a politically engaged citizen. His life and work offer some really valuable insights into how design, aesthetics, social responsibility, and the political realities of shaping our urban landscapes. They're all connected.
It is a reminder that even the little details around us, the buildings, the streets, they're all the result of decisions made by planners like Flagge. And by understanding why they made those choices, we can become more informed, more involved in shaping the future of our cities.
All right, so let's change gears a little and zero in on some of those projects Flagge worked on in Kiel, starting with the revitalization of the harbor's southern tip. This wasn't a small task, was it? We're talking about transforming a mix of industrial wasteland and unused spaces.
Exactly. It's a common issue for port cities. As shipping patterns change, those older parts of the harbor become obsolete, and you're left with this mix of rundown infrastructure and no economic activity.
So how did Flagge tackle this problem? It must have taken a lot of creative thinking and some serious political maneuvering to get everyone on board.
Oh, for sure. From what we know, Flagge seems to have worked on several things at once. First, he had to deal with the practical stuff, like cleaning up any pollution, improving transportation, and putting in the basic infrastructure. That would make new development possible, like laying the groundwork for a completely new neighborhood.
That sounds like a huge job in itself, just getting the area ready for something new.
It was. But beyond the practical side, Flagge also had to create a vision for the area, something that would attract investment, create jobs, and change how people saw the harbor's southern tip. It needed more than a facelift. It needed a whole new identity.
So what was his vision? Did he go for a purely commercial approach? Or was there some thought given to public spaces and community development?
Knowing how he worked and what he did in other places, I think it's very likely that Flagge wanted a balanced approach. He probably saw an opportunity for a mix of residential, commercial, and recreational spaces. Something for everyone.
Yeah, I can picture it. Waterfront promenades, busy cafes, maybe even some art galleries or public art, a place where people would want to live, work, and spend their free time.
You got it. That's how you successfully revitalize an area. You create a destination, something that draws people in and creates a new sense of energy and excitement.
It's really amazing how a good urban planner can take a neglected area and turn it into this vibrant hub of activity.
It's like watching a master artist. But instead of paint and canvas, they use buildings, streets, and public spaces to make their masterpiece.
Speaking of understanding people's needs, let's talk about Flagge's work on creating new residential areas in Kiel. What was his approach to housing? Was he more into those high-density developments, or was he more focused on creating family-friendly neighborhoods?
Well, given his social democratic views, it's reasonable to think that Flagge knew affordable housing was important and that different people needed different types of homes. But without looking at specific documents from his time in Kiel, it's hard to say for sure what his exact approach was.
Yeah, that's true. But we can look at the bigger trends in urban planning back then. For instance, there's a growing movement towards sustainable development and creating those walkable, bike-friendly communities that are so popular now.
You're right. And his work on fixing up the Friedrichsort district might give us some clues. That project likely involved dealing with things like outdated infrastructure, a lack of green space, and a declining sense of community. These were problems a lot of cities faced, and Flagge was on the front lines trying to solve them.
So he probably focused on things like better public amenities, creating parks and areas for people to walk, and encouraging different types of housing to attract a wider range of people.
Exactly. It's about creating a sense of place, a neighborhood where people feel connected to each other. and where they live.
It's like carefully putting together a community, piece by piece. Now, let's not forget about the train station and the surrounding area. That's often the first thing people see when they arrive in a city. And a well-designed station can make all the difference.
Oh yeah, for sure. A train station is like a gateway to the city. It has to be functional and efficient, but it also has to look good. Flagge probably focused on making it easier for passengers to get around, connecting the station with other types of transportation, and creating a nice and welcoming public space.
It all goes back to his artistic vision, doesn't it? It wasn't just about making things work. It was about creating places that were easy on the eyes and made life better for everyone.
Precisely. And that's what's so cool about urban planning. It's where technical knowledge meets creativity and social responsibility meets aesthetics.
Okay, so we've covered a few of Flagge's major projects in Kiel, but there's one more we need to mention. His decision to put speed limits in residential areas. This was a bit controversial, wasn't it? It wasn't just about traffic. It was a statement about what kind of city Kiel should be.
Yeah, it was. It was a classic example of a decision that challenged how things were done. And it really got people talking. On one side, you had people who wanted safer streets for pedestrians, less noise, and a slower pace of life in their neighborhoods. And then you had others who felt like speed limits took away their freedom, and they worried about traffic jams and the economy.
Wow, it's interesting how something as simple as a speed limit can become such a big deal. It really shows what's important to people in a city and how they want to live their lives.
Right, and it shows that Flagge wasn't afraid to make difficult decisions, even when people disagreed. He obviously thought that pedestrian safety and making neighborhoods more livable were more important than the potential backlash.
And it's interesting to see how this controversy mirrors the debates about the London South Cross route. It seems like Flagge was drawn to projects that challenged the norm and pushed the boundaries of urban planning.
He was a real visionary, always searching for better ways to design cities that prioritize people over cars, sustainability over unchecked development, and a good quality of life over just making money.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive into Otto Flagge's work in Kiel, what are your big takeaways?
Well, for me, it's his ability to see both the big picture and the small details. He could handle those huge revitalization projects, like the harbor's southern tip. But he also knew that seemingly small changes, like speed limits, could make a big difference. He saw the city as this complex system, and he worked really hard to improve every part of it.
And he didn't shy away from controversy. He stood up for what he believed in and made the tough calls, even when they weren't popular. You don't see that very often these days.
I agree. Flagge's story reminds us that being a true leader means taking risks and making tough choices to make things better for everyone. He wasn't just an architect or a city planner. He was a true public servant. Well said. But before we get too sentimental, there's one more project we need to talk about. Flagge's work on revitalizing the Friedrichsort district. This project, maybe more than any other, shows his ability to combine social responsibility, aesthetic considerations, and a real understanding of what a community needs. So let's head over to Friedrichsort. What was going on there? What problems was Flagge up against?
You know, Friedrichsort was like a smaller version of what a lot of cities around the world were going through back then. Think about it. Old infrastructure, not enough green space, a sense of community that was disappearing as people moved away or just didn't feel connected to the place anymore. It wasn't a fancy project, but it was important for the people living there.
So it was about more than just making things look better. It was about revitalizing the soul of the place.
Yeah.
How did Flagge go about doing that? Well, it seems like he took a very comprehensive approach. Improving those public spaces was key, like parks, areas where people could walk around, places to hang out and connect with each other. And it wasn't just about creating those spaces. It was about making them accessible and welcoming. He also probably encouraged a mix of different housing types so that different people would want to live there, from families to older folks. That kind of mix helps to create a strong community.
Yeah, it's like he was trying to rebuild the social fabric of the district, making sure everyone felt like they belonged.
Exactly. And that's something really important in urban planning that often gets forgotten. It's not just about the buildings. It's about creating spaces where people feel connected and have a shared identity.
It's funny, we've been talking about this architect and city planner, but it feels like we're also describing a sociologist or a community organizer. Flagge really seemed to get it. He understood that a city is more than just buildings. It's a collection of people's lives, stories, and interconnected paths.
That's a really great way to put it. And it shows how Flagge could see beyond just the technical side of things. And think about how his decisions would impact people. He wasn't just building structures. He was building communities.
So as we reflect on Otto Flagg's life and work, what stands out to you the most? What's the key takeaway from our deep dive?
For me, it's his dedication to creating cities that were both practical and beautiful, cities that met the needs of the people, but also inspired them. He understood that a city reflects its values, and he worked hard to make sure Kiel reflected values like sustainability, taking care of each other, and a deep appreciation for human experience.
And he did all of this while facing the challenges of his time, from rebuilding after the war to navigating a world that was changing so fast. He wasn't afraid to challenge how things were done, to push the limits of what was possible, and to make the hard choices, even when they weren't popular.
He was a true visionary, a leader who saw potential in places others overlooked. He understood the power of design to shape not just our physical surroundings, but also our lives and our communities.
And his influence is still felt today, not just in the buildings and streets he helped create, but also in the many lives he touched, and the inspiration he continues to give to others, to architects, city planners, and everyone who dreams of a better world.
You know, listener, as you go about your day in your own city, take a moment to think about the people who shaped it, the streets, parks, and buildings. Whose vision do you see in the places you spend your time?
And what can you do to shape your own city? How can you make sure it reflects your values and your hopes for a better future? That's what Otto Flagg's story encourages us to consider.
Well, that's all for this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep discovering the amazing world around you.